timely, insightful, discussion and analysis of economic trends and markets. From Southern California to Sacramento, featuring business and political leaders, unique field reports. From Orange County and the campus of Chapman University, this is the Chapman Business Report.
Which country produced by a percentage increase the most oil in 2012? If you guessed the U.S., you'd be right. That and other fun facts, maybe surprising facts, on this segment of the Chapman Business Report. Pete Weitzer joined by SEDB. We had a 14% increase in the U.S. We're number 3 now in the world. And as I mentioned, that would maybe surprise some folks. Of course, other people would say, if that's the case, how come oil doesn't seem to budge from 100 more over Brent is more, and why gas prices don't budge from $4? But let's first talk about the supply side. As we sit here debating again this the Keystone Pipeline, but why all of a sudden we're putting out a lot more oil?
Yeah, you give incentive to people, they respond. See, what has happened, that oil prices have started going up, partly because of what's happening in Middle East and
Sure.
obviously increasing demand.
Iran certainly not part of the...
Increasing demand from China and oil prices, I mean, it was low 20s, during deep recession, and about 90, 100, depending on which one you look. So what has happened, entrepreneurs started looking and said, what can we do?
We can frack.
Prices are attractive. See, that's when prices are high, people respond. So they started this new technology, fracking, which basically is, by the way, it's very expensive, very labor intensive and capital intensive, but they started doing it all over the country, particularly, as you know, North Dakota, it's booming because they're doing it there. Portion of Wyoming, a little bit in Montana, a little bit in Pennsylvania and Texas. And all of that has generated suddenly huge supply of oil, which in the long run, let me say, this is the best thing that is happening in the U.S. economy. If you tell me what
geopolitically, maybe.
Exactly. What is the bright thing that is going to help us, next 10 years, is this process.
Where would oil prices and gasoline prices be without us? Because Europe is down for several reasons. Their production is down. Some of the OPEC countries are down.
And we have an embargo against Iranian oil that they used to sell 2.5 million is down to 1.5. Of course, we're a little bit lucky. The recession helped. The demand is slowed down, but it would have been definitely much higher than what we are seeing. But we do have one fundamental problem, and this is what bothers most people who study the oil industry, is although we're producing these quantity of oil, we don't have a really efficient way of getting this oil to the right place. And this is what Keystone Pipeline is important, because Canada can do lots of shale, oil production.
Well, last word on this. Some people who proponents, and again, as I mentioned, are debating again the Keystone Pipeline. The president was talking about it. It might be part of a larger negotiation, maybe on the budget. Some people say, we've had a revolution in, Apple was a revolution, and there was a revolution for that was the internet, and that this could, an energy could be the next thing to be a big spur to the U.S. economy.
Yeah, I believe so. But again, we have to remember, we have to bring it to refiners. I mean, we can't just pile up oil, and that's what's happening in Cushing in Oklahoma. They produce lots of oil, but there's no way to get it to refinery. They have diverted some pipeline, and they're putting some new pipeline to get it to Texas coast and even maybe to Louisiana coast, where the refineries are, to process these products. And Keystone is important because the oil production, actually the environmental hazard, mostly is in Canada, not in US, because the rest of it is just basically a pipeline that they can do it, manage it, and prevent leak. Of course, always these things happen, but with better technology, we can avoid that. But if we get this oil to consumers, to the right place, I mean, that would be a good news in overall energy cost and gasoline costs.
Going back to my earlier comment, more for the President Obama legacy. The Los Angeles Times, which is part of the Tribune Company, which emerged from bankruptcy, is owned by investors now, which supposedly have no interest in being in the newspaper business, and maybe the TV business. But first up is they're going to sell the newspapers. We understand all of them together, include the LA Times, which we know here, and Chicago Tribune, Baltimore Sun. Your take, if any, because it's got to be a well-heeled suitor. Supposedly, would the real estate go for about $1 billion? Which, oddly enough, 15, 20 years ago, any of these newspapers might have gone for $1 billion, right?
Oh, definitely.
The Koch brothers, who won the second largest private concern, it's Georgia Pacific, it's chemicals, to be their first foray into media. News Corp, which is Murdoch. They call them the 3 Bs. There's Eli Broad, Ron Burkle, a fellow named Buettner who made his money on Wall Street, and the folks, Aaron Kushner, the folks who run the Register. Any surprised that there's so much interest, and there's been some controversy too. Some of the unions and some of the people who put out the LA Times don't want the Koch brothers. They think they might put their libertarian influence on the
first
paper.
we have to understand, newspaper, print business went through really revolution on the downside.
Down more than half in ad revenues.
With internet, so these outlets more or less lost lots of value. The advertising revenue is down, and some of them are in dire financial situations. So we know there's lots of consolidation is going on. You have to benefit from economies of scale. That's probably OC Register is interested because they can consolidate a whole bunch of things. But nonetheless, having said this, I do not have any preference as who should really become the owner of LA Times. All I want is still diversification in journalism. We want different ownership, different views to be presented, and hopefully that's what we're going to get, whoever is becoming owner.
Hopefully newspapers, any media publication makes or breaks on having good stories. This alone will be a good story to follow for the next 6 months. The final comment on what's been happening in Los Angeles and Hollywood for the last 10 years, and it's just getting worse. Their permitted production days are down by almost 2/3 from 16 years ago, and most recently losing big budget feature films to, of all places, London, which has always had a big infrastructure. We know what you need that, but it's not an inexpensive place. Brad Pitt's, for instance, $200 million zombie film, Z, films over there. They have, and it's not coincidence, some of the states neighboring California have big credits. And in case of the UK, the credits go on after the film. They would pay folks who get a profit percentage. Should Hollywood be doing that? We have one, it's a state credit. It's puny compared to what they have over there.
But I hate, there's a big competition here, and I hate the state to get into business of choosing winner and loser and giving credit.
But boss, the industry, the big effects house, Rhythm and Hughes closed down.
Look, this is more
These are jobs.
closer to your, area than mine. I would rather to reduce the permit requirement. Forget about tax credit, but let's get them the job, make the life easier. All these getting the permits and labor costs and all the rules and workman's comp, all of that is making really, relatively speaking, very expensive to produce, which doesn't make sense, But tax subsidy is important. Somebody told me, in spite of belief that these are really job machines, they do not produce as many jobs as very many people think that they do. Nonetheless, California and Los Angeles is known for this business, and we don't want to lose it. And it's petty that we see competition is coming in and grabbing
it just makes
these
no sense. And I'll go to TV. They say half the TV pilots are set in Southern California, but they're being shot. Why? If they're going to be set them here, you should be shooting them here.
Yeah, well, why not? Cost. That's all it is.